Hey, just a really quick message before the video starts. If you want to vote for what game I should review next, make sure to hit the I in the top right hand corner so you can pick your favorite from my list of games that I'm currently working on. Thanks guys, enjoy the video. Hey everyone and welcome back to another episode of what makes this game awesome. I've never reviewed a spook game on this channel before, and that's because I don't like the emphasis that a lot of them put on jump scares. In fact, I'm much more of a fan of the kind of atmospheric genre with horror that more makes you think than just outright makes you jump. But since I'm going to be reviewing some pretty shit spook games on this channel at some point, I figure I should start off with one that I actually like. So today I'm going to be talking about Little Nightmares and what makes this game awesome. Little Nightmares is a stealth-oriented atmospheric horror game in the same way that Limbo and Inside are. If you want to see my review of Limbo, the link's in the description and probably at the end of the video, but the important thing is that I much prefer how this game handles stealth and atmosphere to Limbo, and while I can't say much about how it compares to Inside because I haven't played it, I've heard that this game definitely can at least rival it, which is pretty good considering a team of amazing developers worked on Inside for a very long time. In general, I tend to stay away from stealth games and horror games because I don't like what a lot of them do, so to find a game that is a cross between the two that I actually enjoy really is a rare and interesting sight for me. First up, these graphics. Mwah, they're spicy! I have a guilty pleasure for the highlights on the water and the floor, and this game is one of the best looking games I've ever played. The game looks like a cutscene pretty much all the time, which is really weird, and it's beautiful in its own way, having one of those graphic styles that will never get old, not necessarily realistic, but still beautiful and kind of horrifying at the same time, a bit like Wind Waker. But anyway, even though the whole game looks like an animated movie, it definitely doesn't play like one. You play as this hooded girl called Six, trying to escape a prison called the Moor. You're armed with a lighter, and that's literally it, the rest is up to you. You can't attack, you can just sneak and run away from danger. The movement in this game has tons of care put into it, with the animation looking clean and flowing, and the controls being intuitive and natural. Now, here's the point when I say that this is only from the point of view of me playing with a PS4 controller. I played the whole game with this, and honestly, I found that it really did add to the experience quite a bit. I'm sure that the key bindings on keyboard and mouse are okay, but the controller vibrating with your character's heartbeat and letting you feel all the creaks in the floor really does add something to the game that you really would miss out on if you played on your keyboard and mouse. I just feel like that's worth mentioning because having the tactile feedback and feeling every single creak in the floorboards really makes the game quite a lot more immersive and adds a lot to the tension, so I think that's worth mentioning that this game is definitely designed for a controller. Over the game, you go through 5 areas, with the new DLC adding 3 more, and the environments are some of the best designed I've ever seen before, with some absolutely amazing level design really capturing the feeling of chaos and going much less for realism and much more for iconic, interesting environments that prioritize gameplay over the realism, which makes all of them memorable and fun to play. The kitchen and library levels really stand out for me, having some really normal environments that have been exaggerated to the extreme, to make it feel like something straight out of a Tim Burton film. Each level has lots of hidden collectibles, which are purely optional, and the game doesn't push you to collect them at all, but it does add an extra difficulty factor to add a decent amount to the game's overall length. According to the internet, on average this game took people around 5 hours to complete, and I managed to do it in 3 somehow. So I'm not sure if I could have gotten another hour or 2 if I'd gone for the collectibles, and of course I haven't done the DLC yet, which should add another hour and a half to 2 or 3 hours onto it. That's a decent amount of content, but it's not exactly tons, so I'm not sure if it's worth the full £15 price. The game is very interactive, allowing you lots of freedom with solving puzzles, but not overloading you with shit like Between Me and the Night. I like to see this in puzzle games, they are kind of my favourite genre of game, so I think that giving the player a lot of freedom without overloading you with shit is really important, and I think this game's done a very good job of it. It really hits the sweet spot for a puzzle stealth game. I didn't find a single section frustrating, they just added to the tension, and I legitimately got pretty tense sometimes when monsters brushed past my hiding place. and there are lots of moments that'll make you hold your breath. Here's the first time you meet the librarian face to face, and it's terrifying in the complete silence and the dark build-up. Puzzles are fun, and based around platforming and thinking logically with actual physics instead of magic and stuff that doesn't make sense, using your enemies' weaknesses against them. Overall, the puzzles are one of the best parts of the game, and there's a very strong sense of reward when you figure out how to do a difficult section despite your character's obvious weaknesses. Also, if you couldn't tell from that little scene, the sound design in this game is absolutely fucking flawless. It makes it so immersive and adds so much to the environments. There isn't really a catchy soundtrack, but it's quite atmospheric, and overall the sound really helps for this game to create the spoopy feeling that it's really going for. The enemies in the game also feel very Tim Burton-esque, with some terrifyingly designed characters that all react in different ways, and have different attitudes towards you. For example, the librarian, who's blind by the way, will move to where you last stepped on a creaky floorboard, but the chefs both charge towards you the second you enter their lines of sight. Their designs are great, each feeling unique, grotesque, and having sound design that just exists to freak you out, and succeeds. Like the clicking in the back of the librarian's throat. Ugh. They all fit in very well to their environments, and it doesn't feel like one was designed around the other, but like they've lived there for a while, which really helps to flesh them out as much more believable characters. Also, their AI feels quite intelligent, which really helps them stop feeling like just dumb NPCs. At the end of each stage, after you've cleared all of the puzzles and enemies in a chapter, you enter a scene when your character begins to get weak because of hunger. It reminded me of the character in Hyper Light Drifter coughing blood, and at least when I was playing there was a genuine feeling of worry for the character and a rush to get food. As you go through the game, your character randomly begins doing more and more dark things, like eating this gnome instead of the sausage it's trying to give you, and leaves you wondering if this is your fault, or if the character has its own motives. Okay, so spoiler warning for the final chapter of the story and the plot overall. If you want to avoid that, skip to the time right here. This one. This one right here. Okay, you've had your chance. It's spoiler time. A story is kind of told through the game, but it's quite subtle and you have to be looking out for it to really understand it at the end of this game. So a big credit to everyone online who analysed this game for me, because I had no idea what was going on in the story until after I'd finished the game. In the final chapter, you find a woman who has broken every mirror in her house because she doesn't want to see herself. To beat her, you aim a mirror at her when she attempts to attack you, and this is the fairly easy but kinda satisfying boss battle. After this, you eat her and absorb her power, becoming the most OP thing ever, and killing all the enemies that gave you trouble without breaking a sweat as you leave them all. As a final stage, it's pretty cool and a very satisfying conclusion to the story. So overall, I think that Little Nightmares is a beautiful game with an amazing looking art style and some really tense and interesting gameplay with pretty good game mechanics. The game has a decent amount of content, on the short side, a little too short for me to recommend it at full price, but if you can get it on some kind of sale, maybe for £6 or £7, then I can recommend this game as a definite buy if you're looking for an atmospheric, stealthy game. The absolutely amazing sound design just adds to this stunning atmosphere that's already been created, and the quiet but very atmospheric soundtrack just adds to it even more. The game can get kind of dark at some points, and admittedly this is kind of annoying. I kind of wish you could just turn up that gamma a little bit more, but overall it didn't ruin the game. There were just a couple of puzzles that I couldn't do because of how dark the game was, and I did have to look it up at a couple of points. But overall, I don't think this ruins the game in any way. I think the game's biggest shortcoming is the length of it, but I still didn't feel like I got ripped off for what I paid, and I really enjoyed what I did. So overall, as an atmospheric stealth horror game, I would say this definitely nails it. So with all that taken into consideration, I would rate Little Nightmares an 8 out of 10, with 5 out of 10 being completely average. Just want to clarify that one more time, that a 5 out of 10 is completely average, not a 7 out of 10 or anything. I've changed the way that I've reviewed games a bit. So if the score seems low or high to you, then just keep that in mind. Of course, I've almost definitely missed some stuff about the story and like the overall plot out, So make sure to let me know in the comments what I did miss, because I've totally missed a bunch of it, and thank you to Reddit for filling in all the plot holes, because I would not have known what the fuck was going on in this game if it weren't for some people who had gone and figured it out before Game Theory did it. Or maybe Game Theory did do it. I haven't actually checked. Shit. Either way, if you enjoyed, make sure to like the video, and check out my social stuffs on screen now and in the description if you want to stay updated with the show. Another great way to stay updated with the show is to subscribe, so make sure to do that if you enjoyed what you saw. Anyway guys, I'll see you in the next review, so see you there!
Shout out to Max.